Hello, everyone, and welcome to Westminster Thinks Big 2020. I'm Ashley Atwood, class of 2007, and chair of the Westminster Alumni Board. We're so glad to have you joining us this evening. As we all know, COVID-19 has made it difficult for us to gather in person this year. So we're thrilled to be able to present this signature event in a digital format that allows our audience to watch from the comfort of home. This evening, you'll hear TED-style talks from 3 Westminster alumni. We hope that you find that tonight's topics, from using humor and satire to overcome tough times, to creating your own luck to overcome trauma, to fighting for a seat at the table as an underrepresented group, are full of poignant and timely wisdom. After the live stream, we invite you to join us on Zoom for a reception with the speakers and members of the Alumni Board. The link to register will be in the chat box. Now, without further ado, allow me to welcome the speakers of Westminster Thinks Big to the virtual stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. My name's Sharon Sauer. I'm a senior philosophy student here at Westminster. I'm on the Westminster Thinks Big committee, and I had the opportunity to work with our first speaker of the night, Maxwell Thomas White. Max White graduated from Westminster College in 2020, and as a McNair Scholar, earned his bachelor's in economics, a minor in philosophy, and an honors college certificate. He grew up in Magna, Utah, and is the first in his family to attend college. He is an internationally certified scuba diver, an Eagle Scout, and an avid traveler. While at Westminster College, Max served on the Student Honors Council, worked as an RA, and even founded a club dedicated to volunteering aid to those who experience food insecurity. Now, please welcome to your screen, Max White.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for not coming out tonight. My name is Max White, and tonight I will be speaking on satire and how the use of satire benefits community. So in 2019, I won this giant check for the video advertisement of my product in Westminster College's Opportunity Quest. And if you aren't familiar with Opportunity Quest, it's a 3-round business plan competition with cash prizes. Now, I thought I had won because the original product that I came up with and the business plan that I had crafted was so compelling and so innovative that it blew the judges away. However, after the winner's ceremony was finished, one of the judges came up to me and told me in private that the real reason my ad won was because I was funny. All of the other contestants had done what I had done. They described their product, how it was different from competing products, and we all sold it like an elevator pitch. However, it was my use of satire that distinguished me and my product from everyone else. Now, while I was making that video, I was really scared of being funny. All I knew about the judges were that they were executives at banks, attorneys, venture capitalists, and CEOs of their own companies. Humor, though, is very personal to my identity. When I was younger, I was an outgoing but very husky kid with very long, curly hair. Think of a round Weird Al Yankovic. Needless to say, I was a prime target for bullies. And my coping mechanism while growing up and throughout my life has always been humor. Now, while I was caught up in my preconceived notions of stiff, analytical, and humorless professionals, I forgot they were also human, and humans like to laugh. I ended up mustering the courage to push through, be true to myself, and fit some jokes into the video, and my use of satire paid off, literally. Now, there's this urge I think we all face in our projects and ventures that ultimately hinders our achievements. This urge to be serious, to be stone cold in our calculations, to show no emotion or lapse in professionalism. And that's what this talk is about. Or, well, rather, it's about how we as a community can avoid falling into that trap of absolute seriousness. And that's not to say that being sincere or serious is all undesirable, but everything in moderation, right? No, what I'm talking about is the importance, no, the necessity of satire in a healthy community. So what is satire? Loosely, satire is the use of humor, irony, or hyperbole to highlight and critically analyze an issue. So why is this necessary for the health of a community? Well, let me explain how I use satire in Opportunity Quest. The product I presented was a protein powder supplement made from isolated oat protein. Not something you see on the shelves of your local supermarket, right? Actually, you can't find that product anywhere. It hasn't been done yet. So I had quite the uphill battle ahead of me with a new product in a completely saturated market with established products like whey, soy, brown rice, and pea protein powders, which are all competing for space in the market. However, it would be more accurate to say that all protein powders are competing against whey protein. It's cheap, it has all the essential amino acids humans require, and the protein is completely bioavailable. So I took a bit of a different approach.
Hey, wait, this book, written by a guy using steroids, told me that whey is the best protein to get my bro on.
Hey, random person. Whey comes from cows. Did you know that cow farts are the greatest cause of climate change? Do you know what doesn't fart planet warming methane? That's right, oats.
No way!
No way.
I turned the tables on a seemingly invincible foe by making fun of whey protein. Addressing the community of protein powder consumers, I made fun of the bro culture, which surrounds it through exaggeration, and I mocked whey for the environmental impact of its production. It was through humor that I exposed the weak points of a dominating product in which my oat protein shined. But is satire really necessary to achieve these goals? Certainly, I could approach the issue in a more serious manner, but in my experience, when you approach a contentious issue in a serious manner, people tend to put their guards up and get defensive. No one wants to be lectured seriously, but many will laugh at a comedian making jokes at their expense, making jokes that expose their behavior as contradictory or illogical. Satire can also jostle us out of that serious mode and allow us the opportunity to have new experiences and perspectives, which we might have approached reticently. And that's what satire does incredibly well. Satire is a tool which exemplifies the absurdity of the world we live in. Whether it's nuanced or in your face, exposes the nature of our logic and values by extending the consequences of our actions motivated by those same ideologies, highlighting that distinction between what we say, what we do, and what we hope will happen. In the context of praxis, that process in which our thought or ideology is realized in action, satire exposes the gap between theory and practice, which may be hidden, but is destructive to achieving successful goals. Now, while the consequential importance of satire can help us realize our ideologies and goals more efficiently and effectively, it can also help us have fun during very serious conversations and reinvigorate our attentions to those serious matters. For example, in 2019, I gave a presentation at UCLA on the existentialist philosophies of Simone de Beauvoir and Albert Camus. That's a pretty heavy, dry topic, even for those who are interested in existentialism. So I intertwined my presentation with satire to keep the audience's attention and reinvigorate the discussion. So talking about metaphysics, especially to someone who may not be familiar with the field, is a difficult project. And it's even harder when the discussion is important to your analysis. So I played off the 1980s hit by Olivia Newton-John, Physical, with the title of this slide, Let's Get Metaphysical, and with an admittedly poorly photoshopped Aristotle. When discussing the myth of Sisyphus, both as the title of the essay by Camus, but also as the classical Greek myth, I threw in this quip that scholars largely agree that Sisyphus, damned to roll a boulder up a mountain, the same mountain for all eternity, is the founder of CrossFit. And my presentation was at the end of a long was at the last day of a series of many different presentations that were spanning many different topics. Specifically, many STEM presentations were given before mine. So I kept that in mind, and after a long philosophy presentation, I played off of my peers' rigorous scientific methodologies and threw in this multiple regression analysis for my humanities conclusion. And no disrespect to any of the other presenters during the existentialist philosophy section, but there was noticeably more engagement with my research than any of the other presenters on existentialism. In large, I attribute it to taking a less serious approach to a serious topic and reinvigorating the audience's attention with some light humor. Now, by this point, you may still be questioning whether or not I'm really qualified to speak on satire. There are probably way more people who know about the practical applications of satire, right? And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. There are other people who use satire daily or weekly. There are the editors of The Onion, The Reductress, The Beaverton, etc., whose job depends on the use of satire. However, there's a pretty good chance that if you're a part of the Westminster community, you've seen some of my anonymous works of satire. You may have even read an article in our campus newspaper, The Forum, about it. See, I am the founder and one of the editors of The Griffin, Westminster College's finest news source. And while I'm no Jonathan Swift, and The Griffin certainly isn't a modest proposal, it served as an outlet to address events from our campus, but also from around the world. Again, we poked fun and exaggerated just a little to address topics like intro classes, official campus responses to world events, the highly respectable honors college of which I am an alumni, campus fashion, and a fun fact about this piece, this is actually one of the co-editors of The Griffin, Mary Sanchez. We like to keep our Photoshop and stock images in-house. To the COVID-19 pandemic, a very personal pandemic. And although The Griffin was only in print for a year, we were getting quite a bit of attention. With our post getting shared like this, and in this instance, you can see that our post was getting 93 shares on one post. It was only a matter of time before The Griffin was picked up by the official newspaper of Westminster, The Forum. And despite burdening the editors of The Griffin with such highly politicized terms like fake news, their review was largely positive, noting things like they would even scroll through the feed during production nights because sometimes they were more interested in what we, The Griffin, were doing. I mean, let's be honest, the posts were just that good. And with such a positive review, all I really have to say is this. But the fact that we were growing so quickly meant that we were doing something right. And that leads to how satire operates in a community. Specifically, there is an assumption that needs to be met in order for satire to work efficiently and effectively. In order to make satire, we have to have an understanding of both the reality of organizations, people, animals, or whatever, and the beliefs people hold about those categories. The Onion actually does a really good job at highlighting this distinction. With this headline. In order to make satire, you need to understand the world and how people think. You need to be able to identify when what someone says and what they do don't align or do align. And that process is what makes satire enriching for both the creator and for the audience. It raises awareness towards the absurd, the harmful, the silly, and implicitly encourages us in ways that we can better ourselves, our communities, and the society, which is an aggregate of all. Now, I want to thank you all for joining Westminster Thinks Big tonight. And if anyone in the audience is from The Onion, I look forward to your call about a job offer.
Wow, Max, that was such a light, refreshing, but amazing life lesson that we really do need in such a scary time in our history to know the necessity of satire, but we really needed yours tonight, so thank you for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Daoud Moomin, and I have the great pleasure of serving as this year's ASW Vice President, but even a greater pleasure to work with our next speaker, Jamie MoCrazy. Jamie MoCrazy grew up on the ski slopes. By the time she was 18 years old, she had won junior world championships and moved to Utah to continue training as a professional slopestyle and half-pipe skier. However, in 2018, Jamie crashed at the World Tour Finals, went into a coma, and became paralyzed. In an instant, Jamie went from being one of the world's best slopestyle skiers to relearning basic gross motor skills like walking up the stairs and riding a bike. Jamie didn't let the result of this horrific accident keep her down. Instead, she worked hard to recover, learned on her friends and family for support, and changed her life forward in life with optimism. Please help me welcome Jamie MoCrazy.
Do you ever look at someone and think they are so lucky? Think all their luck is happenstance and it could never happen to you? Well, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines luck as a force of good fortune or misfortune, partially by luck. Partially, just a little bit. But what about the rest of the scope? Would you like to learn about how you can create your own luck after trauma? Well, you're in for some luck because of my world-class skiing experience and my overcoming an unexpected life-changing trauma, I can show you a story that will teach you how to overcome trauma and create your own luck. And that story is pretty relevant to everyone right now because we are globally in a trauma, COVID-19. So we want to come out the other side with as much good fortune as we can. So let's begin now. Growing up, we always are raised with the values of those who raise us. For me, that value was to be my own personal best. I really began to understand that idea when I was at gymnastics show and tell at 4 years old. So what we were supposed to do is run down the runway, jump off the springboard, land on the vault, jump off the vault, and salute to our parents. I was super excited. I was all jittery. I can't stand still when I'm excited, so I'm just bouncing everywhere. And finally, it's my turn. So I run down the runway, jump off the springboard, land on the vault, front flip off the vault, land on my feet, and salute. Super excited and proud. But I was put in timeout. My mom was a little bit confused. She said, "Excuse me, why is my daughter in timeout?" "Well," said the guy in charge, "the rules were to run straight down, jump on the vault, jump straight off the vault, and salute. Your daughter did not fulfill the rules. She broke the rules, and she must be punished for what she was doing." My mom was a little bit confused. She said, "Well, my point of bringing her here is to be her own personal best, to push the limits, to find her own boundaries, to see where she can go. And if doing a front flip is her personal best, then that is what she's going to do." He said, "Well, you're going to have to take her somewhere else because rules are rules." Luckily, my mom did take me somewhere else. I went to arena gymnastics and I got to be my personal best. I got to start competing and I got to travel and compete. And it was pretty exciting because when I was 9 years old in the fall, I actually won Connecticut state championships in gymnastics. That picture of me with that trophy, that's almost as big as me. And then that winter, I won state championships in skiing in New Hampshire. And I said in an article, my sports fantasy was to combine skiing and gymnastics. Well, a combination of the two is slopestyle and half-pipe skiing. Slopestyle skiing, you get judged on an overall impression and you have multiple jumps, kind of like gymnastics, on snow skiing. And then half-pipe, you ski up the half of the tube and you do tricks in the air. Again, gymnastics and skiing. So I combined the two and I started competing. And then I won junior world championships in New Zealand. I made it to X Games. And next thing I knew, I was traveling around the world as a professional skier. It was pretty exciting. And I understood high performance. And I understood how to be the best. And then my story had a little bit of a twist. That twist happened on April 11th, 2015. I was competing at World Tour Finals in Whistler, Canada. I was there with my sister, the little girl in the picture with the yellow pants. She was supposed to compete in half-pipe the next day. The day I'm talking about was a slopestyle competition. So she was watching me. My first run, I ended up in 4th place. Now, that did not cut it for me. 4th place, that's not on the podium. I need to upgrade and change my run. So I upgraded my off-axis backflip to an off-axis double backflip. And I knew 2 years prior, in 2013 at X Games, I had become the first woman in the world to compete any sort of double in a slopestyle run. So I had a pretty good chance of being at the top of the podium. And that's all I cared about at that time. So my little sister gave me a hug as I dropped in for my run. She saw me hit the first couple features. She saw me take off on the jump I was double flipping, but she couldn't see the landing because of the mountain. And then she didn't see me hit the next jump. She still didn't see me hit the next jump. She heard the radio crackle to life. We need all hands on deck and a helicopter on standby. Without a word, she looked at my coach and they put their skis on. As she crested the mountain, she saw me convulsing, spewing blood with my eyes rolled back in my head. In the blink of an eye, our lives had changed. We had encountered an unexpected trauma. As I was airlifted to Vancouver General Hospital, my fatality report was written because statistically, my expectations for survival were so low. If your life changes in the blink of an eye, if you encounter on unexpected trauma and you live through it, what do you do? How do you recover? How do you survive? Well, in life, we're all climbing up a mountain of life. And if you get caught in a metaphorical avalanche that brings you back to the bottom, an unexpected life trauma slides you down, when you're at the bottom, you have two choices. One choice is you can stay at the bottom. You can blame other people. You can feel overwhelmed and depressed. Why did this happen to me? You can stay there. Or you can start to climb an alternative peak. So when you're climbing an alternative peak, how do you do that? What happens? So you're at the bottom and your life has something unexpected has happened, maybe take, for example, COVID, and you lost your job. You didn't do anything to deserve to lose your job, but it happened. So now you want to climb an alternative peak, but what do? Well, the first thing is you focus on your mindset. Then you set attainable goals. During the process, you understand to perform at your own personal best. And then those goals turn into habits on repetition. And you can change your synaptic connections, which is actually restructuring your brain, which allows you to experience more good fortune in the future. So a growth mindset, what is that? Well, there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. With a growth mindset, you think that everything is able to flow, like the ocean, and you can learn things and develop. With a fixed mindset, you are born exactly the way you are going to be forever. So an example of that is my mom had a growth mindset, and she understood neuroplasticity. So when I was in the hospital and the right side of my body was not working, she knew that it could become working again, but it would take time and things to do. So she would have me tie down my strong hand and make breakfast with my weak hand. Now, you might be thinking like eggs and bacon, but no. This breakfast took me an hour, but it was pouring milk and cereal and cutting up bananas with a plastic knife. It would have taken my mom 5 minutes to do this, but she pushed me to do it, and it took me an hour to do it. But because we both believed in a growth mindset, we believed that things can grow and change and develop, so my motion could return to my right side. So the next thing you want to do after you have that mindset, and in that mindset, when you have a growth mindset, you really need to focus on what you believe in. A lot of motivational speakers, you listen to them and they tell you all these optimistic things and you're like, okay, I'm going to make a checklist. I should do all these things. But do you really believe what they're saying? Do you believe that your mindset can change? Belief is important. And so after you believe that you can start to climb an alternative peak and you take those first couple steps, you need to set attainable goals. Attainable goals are goals that you can accomplish tomorrow. So there are growth goals that are those big goals, and they're great to have, but they can seem so far away that they're depressing because you don't think that you can accomplish them. They seem too far. So attainable goals are goals you can accomplish tomorrow. An example of setting attainable goals is my friend Noah Elliott. As a kid, he wanted to be on the skateboarding world tour. As a teenager, he had cancer and he had his leg amputated due to cancer. So those growth goals were no longer feasible for him. So he decided to climb an alternative peak and set attainable goals that he could accomplish. One of those was starting to get into snowboarding. And then he actually started competing in snowboarding. He went to the Paralympics and he won a gold medal in the Paralympics. So he could accomplish these growth goals because he set little attainable goals to get there. So I said at the beginning of my presentation that I really was taught to be my own personal best. And then what I really understood was be the best, and I could perform at a high level. And then after my accident, I really understood what be your own personal best means. It means your best is different every day. One day, my best was becoming the first woman in the world to flip off of a rail in a competition, slopestyle competition. Another day, my personal best was walking up a flight of stairs. Another day, my personal best was swallowing a glass of water, which had taken me 3 weeks to do. So your best is different every day, which is why if you perform each of the goals that you create, the attainable goals at your personal best, then you will be delivering the best that you can. And so by setting those attainable goals, if we repeat them, the repetition builds them into habits. And the habits that we build change our synaptic connections, which is our brain structure. What I mean by that is there's dendrites and axons that are like highways inside of your brain. There are billions of these highways in our brains, and they all intersect at synaptic connections. And so at the synaptic connection, you can turn left or you can turn right. The choice is up to you by the habits that you have built into your life. So climbing an alternative peak is hard. So what can we do about it? Well, like I mentioned, it's really difficult to climb an alternative peak. When you're brought to the bottom and you've experienced an unexpected trauma, it's so easy to ask, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? It's also easy to play the what if game. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, but what if? What if I don't get another job? What if I can't support my family? What if? Another easy thing to do is to put the blame on somebody else. That's something that we are experiencing a lot right now. It's the president's fault. It's the cabinet. It's my boss. It's my teacher. She just graded me wrong. It's somebody else's. Instead of taking what we can control and dealing with that. And so it's hard to climb an alternative peak. It's like walking through snow up to your neck. It's almost impossible. Almost impossible, but it is possible. You can walk those paths. And the more times you walk back and forth on those paths, the easier and easier it gets until it's no hard to walk along the paths. It's just an easy thing. But when you're in the process of climbing those alternative peaks, it's important to really focus on having fun. Find the smile zone. Find things that make you happy. For me, that's skiing, which is why I'm actually currently giving this presentation from Keystone, Colorado, because I wanted to come here and go skiing because that gives me the smile zone. And so sometimes it's little things like making dinner or taking your dog for a walk or giving your child just that extra squeeze. Maybe it's watching an episode of Friends, but whatever the things are that make you happy, focus on always doing them every day and focus on enjoying your process, your current process. It's okay to have those growth goals in the back of your mind, but focus on being happy with who you are today, enjoying your current self and your current life, and making sure you have fun. Because it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. This quote by Charles Dickens sums up my presentation. You can have good fortune and you can have misfortune. You can take steps to create more good fortune that you will receive. So the next time you look at someone and think, wow, they are so lucky, why don't you dig a little bit deeper? Look at the scope of their luck. Look at the mindset that they have. Look at the attainable goals that they set to be able to reach these growth goals. Look at the habits that they built, changing their synaptic connections and allowing them to create their own luck. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that, technical difficulties. Thank you, Jamie. That was very inspirational. Hello, everyone. My name is May Ulie, and it's my pleasure to introduce May. May is a graduate of Westminster from 2012 in accounting and finance. She has spent the first half of her career in venture capital investing at UVF and equity research covering technology companies at Goldman Sachs. Since then, May has spent a majority of her time managing her personal and family portfolio of investments, ranging from public market to private equity to real estate. She's also a venture partner at Hustle Fund, an emerging early stage venture capital fund, where she leads and manages the fund's investments in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. So without further ado, please give May a warm welcome.
Thank you, Chris. What an incredible opportunity for me to return to my alma mater virtually and talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about. 2020 has been a crazy year for all of us. I first got wind of COVID-19 at the beginning of the year while vacationing in Thailand and Vietnam. I'm pretty sure I was on one of the very last flights out of Taiwan before the country closed its border. Women have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. The US Department of Labor has released the numbers and they're not looking good for women. For the first time in 6 years, women are dropping out the workforce at a higher rate than men. More specifically, between August and September of this year, close to 900,000 women in the US dropped out the workforce compared to only 200,000 of men. In venture capital, where I spend the majority of my time these days, the statistics are not looking great for women either. For the last 2 years, there has been a lot of effort in leveling out the playing field for women founders. However, as the pandemic hit, a lot of investors had reverted back to the way they do deals, which is through the existing network. The level of capital that gone to women founders has dropped back to the record low level since 2016. On a personal note, 2020 has not been that bad of a year for me. My friends and family have been careful and staying safe from COVID. Selfishly, I actually prefer working from home rather than getting stuck in the Bay Area traffic jam. And my personal investment, which consists mostly of high-growth technology companies and private investment, has been doing tremendously well. Understanding my privilege, I feel that I am more responsible now than ever to come back and share my stories about how I get to where I am today, how I retain a seat at the table, and hopefully encourage more young women to continue the fight despite all of the new challenges that are presented to us today. So let's go back in time. This is me 25 years ago. This is the first time and probably the last time that any adult attempted to put on a cute little costume on me. I look super thrilled. This is somewhat of a reflection of how I was brought up. Being raised by very strong-willed, working and well-traveled women, I was raised to believe that there's no limit on my potential at all. Actually, the first time I encounter somewhat with a gender bias is not until 8th grade. At junior high in Vietnam, in order to make the dean's list, you have to have the top GPA and win the popular vote by your classmates. I did not win the dean's list, even though I had the top GPA. Actually, I did quite poorly among the popular vote from my classmates. And that was probably the first hint to me that ambitions is something that's not really embraced in a girl. So at that time, at 13, I decided to pour myself and my studying effort into number-oriented fields like math and science. I actually spent my entire high school competing in physics competition against other high school students. And I often found myself the only girl competing there. I did not mind it at all because I felt that in quantitative fields, my track records and numbers speak louder than my gender. So I built a safe little bubble for myself, and I carry this belief with me into college at Westminster College, where I majored in accounting and finance. And during the summer of my sophomore year, I interned at Goldman Sachs in their operations office in Salt Lake City. It was a great experience, my first encounter in a professional working environment. The feedback I got from the managers were really good, but one consistent thing that my male manager told me is that I need to work on not being too assertive. So at the end of the summer, they gave me an offer to return as an intern next year in the same team, but something about working in a back office did not really excite me. So I decided to turn down the offer and figure out a new route for myself. At that time, I had heard about the University Impact Fund and the University Venture Fund. It was an unpaid internship, but I had heard that students from that program went on to go work for big investment banks in New York and San Francisco, and that was very appealing to me. So the summer of my junior year, I applied and realized that I was one of the 2 female interns that made it to the program that summer across both funds. And I was very happy, I was very excited. One of my first projects was to work on this deal memo for the Impact Fund. And as an intern, you were given certain tasks to do. And for those of you who don't know what a deal memo is pretty much an analysis that you put together about the market, the competition, and whether or not you recommend this company as an investment. So as an intern, I was given a really boring little section of putting together the management profiles, which I thought I could literally get done in 10 minutes. So of course I raised my hands asking for more responsibilities. And the next thing I knew, I was called into the investment principal office, and he was telling me that I was not being a team player and I need to learn to stop being too aggressive. And at this point, I had read a lot of books from the Career Center about how a woman is supposed to act and behave in a professional working environment to ensure your promotion and advancement. And the biggest no-no was do not show your emotion at work, and definitely do not cry in the office. So for the next 30 minutes, I completely zoned out of whatever this guy was saying and focused all of my effort on stopping the tears rolling down my cheeks, even though I was feeling this immense sense of injustice. Walking out of the office, I was really ready to quit because I felt that the environment was not supportive and I wouldn't be able to learn anything myself. But lucky for me, another intern had heard of what happened and shared with me a TED Talk by Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook. And I remember very distinctively, during her talk, she looked at the audience and she asked people, please raise your hands if you've ever gotten a feedback that you were being too assertive or too aggressive. And I was shocked to see that most of the women raised their hands and none of the men did. And that was probably one of the biggest realizations of my career, that whatever feedback I was getting was not because of what I did or my personality. It was really a systemic bias that a lot of women across industries in the US were facing. So at this moment, I made a decision that I wasn't going to change who I am, but I'm going to change who I surround myself with. So I slowly moved out the University Impact Fund into their sister fund, the Venture Fund, completely run by a different team, leadership team, who values meritocracy more than the assumption of how a woman is supposed to act. And it's also my first introduction into venture capital and the world of technology. I remember being very impressed with Facebook, which had just gone IPO then, and with their slogans that move fast and break things. And what would you do if you weren't afraid? After college and through a connection at the University Venture Fund, I landed an interview with Goldman Sachs Equity Research Team. And as luck had it, I landed a spot on the Comtech team to cover 20 tech stocks. As you can see in the bottom right picture, that was my analyst class, very few women. In fact, I was the only female analyst that covered tech companies. But I really did not mind it. We were all friends enjoying our early 20s, grinding in the office 80 hours per week. But what bothered me was how the program was structured. First of all, we were getting paid at half of what the other analysts in the big cities was making. And the explanation was that because of cost of living, even though we're putting in the same number of hours and we were producing the same high quality of output, on top of that, your career advancement wasn't really guaranteed. Instead of being able to stay in the same team and advance as an associate, you had to interview with different teams and pretty much started from scratch when you moved to New York. So at the end of my 2-year analyst program, while a lot of my classmates decided to and set up interviews with a lot of different teams in New York, I was interviewing with a lot of tech companies in secret and Silicon Valley. I really wanted to see what it's like to move fast and break things. And immediately after leaving Goldman and joining a tech company in Silicon Valley, my base salary more than doubled. So the second message I wanted to leave with you is if you're working in a toxic environment that's not supportive of your value and do not compensate you enough, you should leave and find your tribe and build your tribe. Here are the pictures of my people in Silicon Valley. The picture to the left is my biz ops team at Storm 8, and the picture to the right is my current team at Hustle Fund. As you can see, the people definitely look more diverse. These are the people that I was very lucky to find who supported me, who overlooked my gender and helped me navigate through the career challenges out here. It is not to say that I did not encounter any bias out here, but because I was able to find a support system, I'm able to navigate through a lot of challenges. And at the age of 24, after proving that I could produce returns, I earned the ability and the right to manage $10 million of advertising budget at Storm 8. After more than half of the decade working in Silicon Valley, I realized one thing, that despite its label of meritocracy, gender bias and discrimination of all sorts still exist everywhere. People who control the capital control the power. And unfortunately, the majority of capital in Silicon Valley is still controlled by older white men who love to fund people that look like them and come from the same background as them. Chamath is a very well-known figure in Silicon Valley. Being an immigrant himself, he has excelled through the ranks at Facebook in the early days and went on to become a billionaire venture capitalist himself. And he has a view that capital can be an instrument of change. And he put it concretely into one of his latest talks at Stanford. I'm going to read his quote for you. Get the money, then let's get around the table and let's create new rules. It is going to be made, it is going to be allocated, and you have a moral imperative to make sure that if you have a point of view that matters and you want to reflect it, you get it. Economic incentives drive the world for better or for worse. In the absence of capital, your view is irrelevant. With capital, you are powerful. And then you decide, I'm gonna go get it. Other people are gonna go get it. then it's the competition of views. The more diverse of those views, the more rational actors we'll have, and the more of a balanced and fair system that we'll have. And that's what diversity means to me. My life has been a living example of the difference between without capital and with capital. A decade ago, with no capital to my name, with all the analysis that I've done, I could not push a recommendation of a stock through to a vice president at Goldman. Today, with capital under management, I have managing directors and partners at financial firms, including Goldman, at my disposal. I know my position is privileged, and I get here because I was lucky to have a good support system that lift me out and help me overcome the biases. Today, with the capital under my management and with the power to decide where that capital will go, I'm very cognizant of my own bias and of society's bias. And I hope to use the power of capital to help raise women through the ranks and get more women to sit around a table and change the rules. So if there's anything that you're gonna walk away with my talk today, walk away with these three things. One, do you know your worth? Do not let anyone else put a limit on your potential. Two, if you're working in a toxic environment, have the courage to walk away, find your tribe and build your tribe. And three, do not underestimate the power of capital as an instrument of change. Go get the money. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my stories today. If I can be helpful in any way, or if you're a student founder that are working on a tech company or a tech idea, I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Westminster Thinks Big 2020 in our virtual space. I just want to give a huge thank you once again to May, Max, and Jamie for their presentations tonight. I'm Cheyenne, and I am the manager of advancement events. This evening is not actually over. We have a Zoom reception happening in about 8 minutes at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. The link to register for that, if you have not registered yet, is in the chat box of the YouTube video. So please register and join us. We'll have our presenters and members of the alumni board there to discuss the presentations tonight and answer some questions. Thank you once again for listening and watching, and we hope to see you soon.